Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaber.io, and I'm here today with Zack Arnold, the co-founder of The Perfect Gene. Good afternoon, Zack.
Good afternoon.
I know it's the weekend there officially, correct?
Yeah, I mean this is really capping off my week here, and then I'm gonna launch into relaxation.
Well, very good. I will be joining you. I probably will also right after this, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
awesome.
So can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Yeah, so I actually graduated from Stanford in 2010. Right after that, I was a partner at a daily deal sort of B2B startup called Jean Co.
Hmm.
So we did the whole TechCrunch disrupt thing, familiarize myself with the startup industry. If you remember, like Groupon and that space at the time was like very hot. So there was a lot of interest. We did well for a while, and then it sort of collapsed with the rest of that space.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I actually moved into the family apparel business.
Hmm.
So my father has been working effectively in the men's apparel industry for most of his career. I came into that business, sort of like modernized and updated it a bit. Though again, it was, and it is still primarily like a wholesale business, so selling to retailers, but sort of using my brief background in tech out of school and just some of the knowledge I've accumulated over the years. I had both been sort of advising and investing in startups. And through one of those startups, Kidbox, I ended up meeting my co-founder, Ovadia. And we just, sort of saw a bit of a void to create a better denim product for direct to consumer, and leveraging a lot of my relationships in terms of the supply chain and his prior relationships in tech, we decided to launch The Perfect Gene.
Wow, sounds very interesting. And you said you went to Stanford.
Yeah, I was actually a history major and a math minor at Stanford. So
Okay.
a unique combination. And then I went into tech and then into clothing. So
You've done a little bit of everything.
yeah, a little bit of everything. I hope to go back at some point for a master's degree in something. I haven't decided what yet.
How about anthropology or something like that?
Yeah, I was thinking philosophy, but
Here we go. That would be a good
yeah.
one. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as an employee and an employer?
Yeah, I mean, so it wasn't something that I was especially familiar with until I started this company. Actually, sorry, that's not true. At Chompon, back out of school, we were actually a part of StartX, which is like Stanford Seed Incubator.
Okay.
So like my other two partners were actually working out of StartX, and I was working out of New York doing like a lot of the sales. So I had experience early on with that sort of setup, even before there were really any official tools.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Asana launched in like 2012 or something around the
Oh, nice.
2011, and that was sort of the first tool. But then since then, I was working in the apparel business, like working closely day to day with the samples, with the designers, with the production manager. But then when we started this company, we knew it would be distributed across various spaces from the beginning. So Ovadia, my co-founder, he had left Kidbox. He was going to work from home. He has a home office. He's just like set up very well there. He has his own whiteboard in his room. Our tech team is a company called Soft Limit, and they mostly work from home. A company, Thesis, actually does our marketing. They work from home separately. Our warehouse is in California. Our product is produced overseas. So each team is together I mean, they're not together, but
Yeah.
each team works together separately in distinct spaces. And honestly, we try to keep it simple. So we know that each team is very good at what they do. and we sort of just go ahead and we utilize Slack and Google Docs to some extent, but overall, like group meetings are somewhat infrequent. We probably do that every 2 weeks.
Mm. Wow, interesting. And from the sounds of it, you have very few actual employees. It sounds like you just farm out most of it.
Yeah, so it's really just honestly just Ovadia and I
Wow.
in terms of like working on this full time. So what we did is we actually split up a lot of the equity in the business across varying partners. So we made sure we were keeping everyone incentivized, and we know they're really good at their respective roles. So like while we set the overall direction and strategy, we very much trust each individual team to do what they do well.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. It's kind of like building a house. You know, the prime contractor, and
Yeah,
that person brings in all the subcontractors, right?
exactly. Yeah, it is. It's very much, it's been very much like, building a house remotely, like a digital house without physical tools. But yeah, I mean, it was sort of just a thesis or a theory in the beginning that we could actually operate this way.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we knew each individual portion of the team was very talented, and we knew they handled their responsibilities well. And for the things that need to be done in person, we'll either like meet up like for a photo shoot, right? We need to bring in our content manager, we need to bring in models, we're there to oversee it. So those things happen obviously in a person to person group environment. And then my portion, my responsibility, well, one of my responsibilities is related to actual design and approval, where I'm working with our designer. That of course has to happen in person, because in the apparel business you need to physically work with the product.
Yeah.
But everything else pretty much happens digitally across everyone's individual homes.
Yeah, that's really quite interesting, because that's kind of that itself is like a newer model. There's people that do the remote teams, but they're employees. So you obviously keep your expenses down to a great degree.
Yeah. So yeah, we're trying to keep it very simple and very lean. We're incentivizing each of the individual groups and partners in terms of equity ownership in the company, which is, I mean, it is fairly rare to do it the way we've done it, because we've split it effectively over like 6 or 7 different partners instead of having 2 or 3 co-founders and then like VC investment and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's really, and I would assume it helps with the overall, when there's disagreements, since you're the parent company and they're the vendor, they are your customer, right?
Right, exactly. It's super helpful with that. It's also really helpful, again, with just keeping people incentivized. So I mentioned before, we don't have that many frequent calls where like everyone's together all at the same time. And we sort of don't have to, because I mean, the business from the start had been working well. We fine-tune things here and there. And again, each individual partner is incentivized to do well. It's not just a salary, right? They have a stake in the success of the company.
It's kind of the best of both worlds, actually, for everybody involved, I would think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as long as the company's doing well.
Right. But that would be true if the company wasn't doing well and you were all one company, it would be the same thing.
Right, exactly. It would be the same thing.
So, right, it's not much of a difference. So what do you think is the future of remote employment, since you have this, unique take on it, and what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
Yeah, I mean, I do think like some of the tools that are being utilized are helping a lot. I know, Google Docs is certainly a more basic tool now in the scheme of things, but it's really easy, whether you're using Dropbox or Google Docs, to just have all of your files and information in one place. I don't think it necessarily optimizes like communication or day-to-day work, but to have everything in a centralized location at the very least is a requirement, right? I do think, not necessarily for the purposes of our business, because as I mentioned, there's not that much consistent group communication across every field. Like each of the teams interact together, but not each individual sector of the company. I do believe there needs to be better tools in that regard, like for other companies. At least, what I've heard, even the investment banks in New York, right? They're starting to bring employees back in because they don't have a proper accountability system, right? So I do think there will be more and more technology like leaning towards that. I mean, I think you've seen difficulties in digital education for the same reason. Like it can be hard to keep people focused while they're at home.
Yeah, well, especially the students.
Yeah, especially students more so than people working their day jobs. But yeah, that was one of the first things. Ovadia and I were talking to a friend. He works as an equity analyst, but with remote schooling, he had a young kid, and he was like, if you can figure out a tool to keep my kid focused without me having to stop by the computer every second, you're going to be very wealthy men.
Yes, I would agree, especially the really young ones and the teenagers. Yeah. I think that like 8 to 12-year-old, they're okay, right?
Yeah. I think they're okay. That said, though, like I do think you'll see more and more tech companies sort of replicating our setup. And I actually advise another company, Nadine West, that has a very, very similar setup too. I think, if you can really trust the partners you're working with and you understand their level of expertise in a particular space, all you really need to do is provide them with the high level direction and sort of fine tune it. There's just not as much of a need. Like clothing is probably one of the companies that still has a very clear need for in-person interaction, just if you need more than one person looking at a physical sample. But other businesses, it's just becoming less and less of a requirement to meet consistently in person or be physically present with your coworkers.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was happening anyway beforehand with companies that had, they were doing marketing in, the East Coast.
Yeah, exactly.
Development in the West. So it was already happening. And that brings up an interesting question, because take marketing and take your web developers. I mean, they have to have some interaction, right? Do they just talk to each other, or do you facilitate that?
Yeah, so that we're generally, Ovadia and I sort of sit as an in-between, because we do both have, again, very, very basic background, but like we do have some experience in product development, web design, and coding. So we sort of just sit in between. Like we basically communicate generally with both teams separately. And then we sort of come up with whatever like theses we want to test. And then we'll like take that from the ad team, put, our own twist or opinion on it, and then push it to the digital team. So yeah, I mean, we're lucky that we have the right background to sort of deal with all of these teams. We're not so much managing them directly as sort of like just connecting them.
Yeah, we're guiding them. Yeah, so you write specs, I would assume.
Huh?
You write specs?
Oh, Vadia does, not me.
Okay. All right, well, I'll talk to him about that someday.
Yeah, we'll get him on next.
So what is the story behind the Perfect Gene? Why are you the Perfect Gene? Who is your target audience? And, where can someone get them? Because because I love to have a really comfortable pair of jeans when I'm doing these, right? I am wearing, just for the record, I am wearing pants, even though you don't need to on a Zoom call, but I am.
I always have the jeans on. So.
Yeah, see, well, I don't have perfect jeans on, so how would I get a pair?
So, I mean, we're selling solely through our website, theperfectjean.nyc. As far as the product and the creation of the brand, we really sought to create like the most comfortable, durable jean at an attractive price point online. And that was really the mission. It was something that I saw like as a void in terms of my experience in the men's apparel industry. And we really looked to take that head on. If you check out the website, it's very humorous content. Our marketing is sort of directed towards male genitalia.
I noticed that, yes.
So like stretches so your nuts ain't crushed type approach. And the customers really responded to it, honestly. And our customer base is pretty broad. I'd say it's honestly from like 18 to 65. The core of it is still, 25 to 40 years old. But we've really seen like all ages and all demographics respond. And yes, it is an amazing product and the product backs it up, but certainly a lot of what they're responding to is the fun content and humor. And I think you're seeing that with a lot of direct consumer brands nowadays.
Yes. And it's interesting. When I saw your website, it reminded me of a book I have called Thug Kitchen. Have you ever read Thug Kitchen?
No, I haven't.
It's a cookbook. Similar thing. It's a my daughter and my sister are vegan, so they always encourage me that way. So
my wife's vegan.
Yeah, so she'll love this book then.
Yeah.
Right, and you can incorporate some of the ideas from it on your website.
No, that's great. I mean, again, we're always looking for feedback, and it's sort of a guiding principle of our company to just create like humorous content that the customer really responds to.
Yeah, no, I did have a couple chuckles when I was on your website. So I admit it. And I'm still in your target demographic. I'm at the other end of it.
Again, comfortable jeans don't really have a cutoff point. It's like it's just a matter of how you're interacting with the customer and how you're selling to them. And it's interesting. People are definitely responding to what we're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you're younger, you care about style and all that stuff. And as you get older, I mean, I just go into the store and say, just give me the most comfortable one. That's it.
Right, exactly.
Especially shoes, right? Just give me the most comfortable ones.
But it's the truth. And now you are seeing that also from a younger demographic, even before everyone was working from home. Like, I do think we've seen a bit of a pickup just because people need to look professional on Zoom calls and feel comfortable. So it was sort of an ideal product for that circumstance.
It actually was probably a good idea. You probably have it came out at the right time. So.
Yeah, it definitely came out at the right time. I mean, we honestly launched it in December, January.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, because I tell you, I have not bought any work shirts or pants.
Yeah, no one, pretty much, I don't think anyone is buying woven shirts.
No. I can tell you I'm not. I don't know anybody else. There's probably a few people still, but
a few people here and there, but that part of the market was definitely hurt. Golf shirts though, way up.
I have.
Exactly.
Golf courses are one of the few things that are open, and I am a golfer, so I have done that. Now, you're going to come out with the perfect golf shirt someday?
Maybe. We're thinking about it. I mean, we purchased a series of the domain names with the idea that we would launch other products. Honestly, like, we've seen so much success thus far in what we've been doing that we're going to focus on growing this business first before we really expand to other products. The denim business in the United States is a sizable business. So there's plenty of room to grow like within this niche, and then we'll see.
Well, when you're ready, I'll volunteer to be a model and a tester. How's that?
That's terrific.
All right. This actually is a golf shirt. So,
Yeah.
so how did you incorporate? I mean,
Yeah.
the idea of remote at your company and the way you did it. I mean, did you just plan to do it, or did it just kind of happen organically?
Yeah, I mean, we knew fundamentally that we were going to create a remote company. So, in terms of the technology we've used, it has been like a bit of a learning curve. And again, we probably use text and phone calls more so than like a lot of other companies, just because Ovadi and I communicate pretty frequently, and we just like speaking on the phone. But yeah, it was. I'd say it was a mix of both. Like, we came in knowing that this was going to be a remote company from the start. Um, did we necessarily like choose what platforms we were going to use to like structure the company? No. But again, each of our individual teams already have their own internal like work from home setups, right?
Mhm.
Because the ad team was already a distributed team. Soft Limit, the digital team, was already a distributed team, so they have their own internal processes. I believe both of them use Slack. Both of them were using Zoom before this.
Mhm.
So they were set up for it. And then the communication between Ovadi and I has sort of been been the same as it was like when we were just discussing business concepts.
Yeah, interesting. So,
Yeah.
I mean, well, that brings up the obvious question. COVID made everybody go remote.
Yeah.
You really were 100% remote already.
Yeah, exactly. Except for again, me and the designer,
Mm-hmm.
like receiving the samples. Yeah, I mean, every team was distributed in their own locations, and we were the only two people physically together. Yeah.
Wow. So that really, nothing really changed for you, because even your customer, you're not selling to brick and mortar, right? You're selling direct to consumer.
Yeah, it's crazy. Nothing really changed. Obviously, like when offices shut down, I wasn't meeting with the designer for that period in March, April, May.
Mm-hmm.
I forget how long it was. But yeah, otherwise, fundamentally, nothing really changed for us. And we'll sort of see how it goes as we scale, because there will be other people that need to be added to the team. But again, the teams that manage sort of email, marketing, digital customer service, they are already remote teams, sort of run under distinct organizations. So their setup is solid. I think like Ovadi and I are the ones who will need to learn as we have to make more decisions.
Yeah.
We've kept this company pretty simple. Like right now, there are only 2 fits and 4 washes. We're expanding that to 3 fits and 6 washes by the second week of October. But yeah, like we're going to try to keep it simple as long as possible. I do assume at some point we'll have to get a bit more regimented in terms of like what interface we're using. We use Slack, but not that frequently.
Yeah. Interesting. You think about the next employee you hire, you'll increase your roster by 50%.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big hire.
I know. Better be a good one.
Yeah, it's better. That is very true.
So, well, finally, because I know you want to get out onto your weekend, there are companies like Gabriel that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups. It sounds like you already have a company that does something similar, that does all your web development, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we work with Soft Limit. I mean, our platform is built on Shopify. They're Shopify specialists. Again, in terms of the technology stack, it's a direct consumer company. We're selling jeans. It's not necessarily that complicated. We try to do as much A/B testing as possible. We'll continue to build it out, but it's I'm sure not like some of your other clients or some of the other companies you work with. But there's just like massive importance in especially now, just working with a company that has experience working with startups that have succeeded in a remote or distributed environment and startups that have failed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that knowledge as a foundation for like who you're working with and who you're partnering with
Mm-hmm.
is probably the most crucial aspect. And that's also sort of how we ultimately ended up with like the equity ownerships and partnerships that we currently have.
Yeah. And interesting. I mean, what you just said, you're on Shopify, so you don't even have native code.
Right. No native code. We're on Shopify. We have some customizations on top of like a typical Shopify template, but yeah, it's no native code. But Shopify, obviously they've done very well as in part as the result of COVID and the shutdown, and they're continuing to grow their tool base. It'll never be like a completely native platform,
Right.
But they're making sure that their offering is pretty robust.
Yeah. No, I've recommended it to people. I mean,
yeah.
If you don't have to build native code, don't. It's a
right, exactly.
Skill set, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're selling jeans here.
Right.
We're not selling software to businesses. We're not trying to totally reinvent the wheel. We're making a much better product, but we're not reinventing the wheel.
I mean,
yeah.
It's interesting because you really are concentrating on your product. That's really it.
Yeah, exactly. On the product and on the content. And like those are the two primary things that drive our business. In terms of the ads, there's like a lot of A/B testing, right? As far as ultimately what the customer responds to and where we drive our dollars. That's probably the most complicated portion of our business, but we try to keep everything really simple.
Yeah, interesting. And just out of curiosity, did you decide on Shopify and then pick the partner, or did you pick the partner and they decided on Shopify?
It was no, it was combined. So this is someone that Ovadia had actually worked with in the past. I looked at a series of other platforms. I mean, obviously, like Magento is one. I don't know if they're still around. There was a company, Molten, that was like totally API based. But yeah, there were other options. Obviously, Shopify is super well known. It's pretty simple, and the developers that we decided to work with were most familiar with that platform. I mean, it was sort of a group decision. Like we were going to go with them; they were going to use Shopify. Yeah.
So it just kind of.
Yeah, it worked.
Just came together. Well, cool. Well, Zach, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been really fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I'm going to go find a really good friend and start a new company.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do, people.
It's been super rewarding. And it's, we had projections in mind just based on our experience and the people we were working with. But you never really know until you get into it. And it's been exceeding our expectations so far.
That's great. And I think I might buy a pair of jeans. Well, I think I'm going to wait for the third option to come out. When's that coming out? October, you said?
Yeah, that's coming out second week of October. We've got the athletic fit.
What I like.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can golf in those.
You can golf in those. I mean, I think golf courses have become a bit more lenient about the required attire. So.
Well, it's interesting. Private courses, no.
Not so much. But
public, yeah. Public. I've worn jeans on public courses.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I will try it out. Great. Well, thank you again for your time. And have a great weekend.
You too.